The evening sky was turning a deep orange as Amina drove her small 10-year-old car down the quiet road that cut through the outskirts of the city. Her shoulders ached from the 12-hour shift at the hospital, where she had been on her feet all day. The watch on her wrist showed it was almost 7 in the evening. Her eyes felt heavy, but the thought of her warm bed waiting at home kept her going. Amina was a nurse who had been working at City General Hospital for the past 8 years. At 32, she had become known among her colleagues for her gentle hands and calm voice even during the most hectic emergencies. Today had been particularly tough. 2 emergency cases had come in just as her shift was ending. Of course, she had stayed to help. "Just another 20 minutes and I'll be home," she whispered to herself, turning down the volume of the old radio that kept cutting in and out. The road ahead was mostly empty, with trees lining both sides, their leaves rustling in the gentle breeze. That's when she noticed it. A sleek black car pulled over on the shoulder about 50 meters ahead. Even from a distance, Amina could tell it was expensive, the kind she only saw in magazines or driven by the wealthy people who sometimes came to the hospital's private wing. The hood was up, and a man in a suit was leaning over the engine, his body language screaming frustration. Amina slowed down as she approached. A part of her wanted to keep driving. She was exhausted, and stopping for strangers, especially as a woman alone in the evening, wasn't always the safest choice. But another part of her, the part that had chosen nursing as a profession, couldn't just drive past someone who might need help. She pulled over about 10 meters behind the expensive car, leaving her headlights on to illuminate the area. Taking a deep breath, she grabbed her phone and put it in her pocket before stepping out. "Having trouble with your car?" she called out, keeping a safe distance. The man turned around, clearly surprised to see her. He was tall, with graying temples, wearing a suit that probably cost more than 3 months of Amina's salary. His tie was loosened, and there were smudges of grease on his otherwise immaculate white shirt. "Yes," he said, his voice carrying the refined accent of someone who had attended expensive schools. "It just stopped working in the middle of the road. I've been trying to figure out what's wrong, but I'm not exactly a mechanic." He gave a small laugh, but Amina could see the tension in his face. "Have you called for help?" she asked, taking a few steps closer but still maintaining a respectful distance. "I tried, but my phone doesn't have service out here," he replied, holding up an expensive smartphone. "And the car's built-in communication system seems to be affected by whatever is wrong with the engine." Amina pulled out her own phone, AE, simple model with a cracked screen. "I only have 1 bar of signal, but I can try to call a tow truck for you if you'd like." "That would be very kind. Thank you," the man said, looking relieved. Amina dialed the number of a roadside assistance service, but after several attempts, the call wouldn't go through. "I'm sorry, the connection is too weak here," she apologized. The man sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I guess I'll have to walk to find better reception." Amina hesitated for a moment, then asked, "Would you mind if I took a look at the car? My father used to run a small repair shop, and I helped him a lot growing up." The man raised his eyebrows in surprise. "You know about cars?" "I'm not an expert," Amina said with a small smile. "But I know a few things. Sometimes it's just a simple problem that looks worse than it is." The man stepped aside, gesturing toward the engine. "By all means, I'm Rafiq, by the way." "Amina," she replied, moving toward the car. She was acutely aware of her simple clothes, worn jeans and a plain blue kurta, next to his expensive suit. Her hands, though clean, showed the signs of someone who worked hard for a living with short nails and dry skin from constant washing at the hospital. As she approached the car, she noticed it was even more luxurious up close. The dashboard looked like it belonged in an airplane cockpit, with screens and buttons she had never seen in a vehicle before. "This is a nice car," she commented, bending to examine the engine. The complexity of what she saw was intimidating. It looked far more advanced than anything in her father's old shop. But the basics of an engine remained the same, she reminded herself. "It's supposed to be," Rafiq said with a hint of frustration, "but not much use when it breaks down in the middle of nowhere." Amina smiled to herself. This wasn't nowhere to her. It was just 10 minutes from the neighborhood where she had grown up. But she understood what he meant. To someone like him, anywhere outside the fancy parts of the city might seem remote. "Let me see," she said, carefully examining the engine. The light was fading fast, so she pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. "Can you try starting it so I can hear what it sounds like?" Rafik nodded and got into the driver's seat. When he turned the key, the engine made a whirring noise but wouldn't catch. "Again, please," Amina called out, listening carefully. After the third try, she had a hunch. "I think it might be your fuel pump," she said. "Or possibly a sensor that's telling the car the fuel pump isn't working, even if it is." Rafik stepped out of the car, looking impressed. "How can you tell?" "The sound," she explained, "and the way it's trying to start but can't quite get there. In the older cars my father fixed, we could bypass the problem temporarily, but with a car this sophisticated..." She trailed off, feeling out of her depth. "Is there anything we can try?" Rafik asked, checking his watch. Amina could tell he was someone who wasn't used to having his plans disrupted. "Let me check one more thing," she said, reaching deeper into the engine compartment. Her fingers found a connection that seemed loose. "Actually, it might not be the fuel pump. Can you shine your phone light right here?" Rafik moved closer, their shoulders almost touching as they both leaned over the engine. Amina could smell his expensive cologne, a stark contrast to the antiseptic scent that usually clung to her after a day at the hospital. "See this connection?" She pointed. "It's loose. This might be sending wrong signals to your car's computer." With careful fingers, she secured the connection, making sure it was properly seated. "Try it now," she suggested, stepping back. Rafik returned to the driver's seat and turned the key. The engine coughed once, twice, and then roared to life. The look of surprise and delight on his face made Amina smile despite her exhaustion. "You did it," he exclaimed, getting out of the car with newfound energy. "How did you know what to look for?" Amina shrugged. "Like I said, I grew up around cars. My father believed everyone should understand the basics of how things work, including his daughters. This is just a temporary fix, though. You should still have a professional look at it." Rafik was looking at her with a mix of gratitude and curiosity, as if seeing her properly for the first time. "I can't thank you enough. Most people would have just driven by." "Anyone would have stopped to help," Amina said, though she knew that wasn't entirely true. "Many would have kept driving, especially seeing such an expensive car, assuming the owner could easily get help." "Not everyone," Rafik said softly. "Especially not everyone would know how to help." He reached into his pocket. "Please, let me give you something for your trouble." Amina held up her hand, shaking her head. "No need for that. I'm just glad I could help." "At least let me pay for the time you've lost," Rafik insisted, pulling out a wallet that looked to be made of fine leather. "Really, it's fine," Amina said firmly. "I was just heading home after work. You haven't made me late for anything important." As she spoke, she gestured with her hand. And that's when Rafik noticed the ring on her finger. It wasn't fancy or large, just a simple band with an unusual green stone that caught the last light of day in a way that made it seem to glow from within. Something about it caught his attention, a nagging familiarity he couldn't place. "That's an interesting ring," he said, his eyes fixed on her hand. Amina instinctively covered the ring with her other hand, a protective gesture she wasn't even aware of making. "Oh, it's just an old family thing," she said, suddenly self-conscious. "Nothing valuable." But the way she said it and the way her eyes shifted away suggested there was more to the story than she was willing to share with a stranger on a lonely road. Rafik didn't press the issue. "Well, I'm grateful for your help, Amina. Not many people would have the knowledge or the kindness to stop like you did." Amina nodded, already stepping back toward her car. "You should get that checked properly tomorrow," she reminded him. "The connection might come loose again." "I will," Rafik promised. "Drive safely." As Amina got back into her old car, she could feel Rafik watching her. Something about the way he had looked at her ring made her uneasy. It wasn't just curiosity. There had been recognition in his eyes, though she couldn't imagine how. The ring had been in her family for generations, passed down from her grandfather, a simple man who had once done a great kindness and asked for nothing in return except this small token. As she drove away, Amina glanced in her rearview mirror. Rafiq was still standing beside his expensive car, watching her leave. Little did she know that this chance encounter on a quiet evening road was about to change both their lives in ways neither could imagine. 3 days had passed since Amina's chance encounter with Rafiq on that quiet stretch of road. Life had returned to its normal rhythm. Early mornings at the hospital, the familiar faces of patients, the smell of disinfectant that never quite left her clothes. Today had been particularly hectic, with 2 nurses calling in sick, leaving the rest of the staff to pick up the slack. "Amina, can you take Mrs. Ahmad's blood pressure before you go?" her supervisor asked as Amina was getting ready to leave. "Of course," Amina replied, despite having already stayed an hour past her shift. She never complained about these things. The patients always came first. That was how her parents had raised her, to care for others before herself. It was nearly 7 in the evening by the time Amina finally walked out of the hospital. The sun was setting, casting long shadows across the parking lot. She dug through her bag for her car keys, her mind already drifting to the simple dinner she would make when she got home. "Amina?" The voice startled her. She turned to find Rafiq, standing a few feet away, looking oddly out of place in the hospital parking lot with his polished shoes and tailored suit. He seemed different in the daylight, more approachable somehow, though still unmistakably wealthy. "I hope I'm not frightening you," he said with an apologetic smile. "I asked at reception if you were working today." "How did you know where I work?" Amina asked, her hand instinctively tightening around her keys. "Your badge," Rafiq explained, pointing to his own chest. "The other night you were still wearing it. I saw the hospital logo." Amina relaxed slightly. She often forgot to remove her ID badge after work. "Is everything okay? Did the car break down again?" Rafiq laughed, a warm sound that seemed to soften his formal appearance. "No, the car is fine. I had it checked, just like you suggested. The mechanic was impressed by your diagnosis. He said not many people would have spotted that connection issue so quickly." Amina shrugged, uncomfortable with the praise. "I just got lucky. My father taught me well. That's actually why I'm here," Rafiq said. "I wanted to thank you properly. You saved me from what would have been a very long and unpleasant night. I was hoping I could buy you dinner, as a thank you." Amina hesitated. In the world she lived, single women didn't just go to dinner with men they'd met on the side of the road, no matter how well-dressed or polite they seemed. And yet, there was something about Rafiq that didn't set off any alarm bells in her mind. "That's really not necessary," she said finally. "Anyone would have done the same." "I disagree," Rafiq replied. "In fact, 3 other cars drove right past me before you stopped, and none of them would have known how to fix the problem." He paused, then added, "Just dinner, at a public place of your choosing. And if you're uncomfortable, we can make it lunch instead, in broad daylight." The way he acknowledged her potential discomfort made Amina reconsider. "Why is this so important to you?" she asked, genuinely curious. Rafiq seemed to think about his answer for a moment. "Honestly, because kindness without expectation of reward has become rare in my world, and I'd like to understand what makes someone stop to help a stranger when there's nothing in it for them." His honesty surprised her. "Okay," she said finally, "but lunch, not dinner, and somewhere simple." The relief on Rafiq's face was almost comical. "Perfect. Tomorrow, if you're not working, that is." "Tomorrow is my day off," Amina confirmed. "There's a small cafe called Noor's about 2 blocks from here. They serve good food, nothing fancy. We could meet there at noon." "Noor's at noon," Rafiq repeated with a smile. "I'll be there." As he walked away toward a car that was even nicer than the one he'd been driving when they met, Amina wondered if she'd made a mistake. Their worlds couldn't be more different. What could they possibly have to talk about over lunch? Noor's cafe was busier than Amina had expected for a weekday. The lunch crowd was a mix of hospital staff, office workers from nearby buildings, and students from the local university. The place was nothing special to look at. Simple wooden tables, ceiling fans that spun lazily overhead, and walls decorated with faded photographs of the city from decades past. But the food was delicious and affordable, which was why Amina often came here on her lunch breaks. She arrived a few minutes early and chose a table near the window, where she could see people walking by on the street. She wore a simple blue shalwar kameez, her hair tied back in a practical ponytail. The only jewelry she wore was the ring, her grandfather's ring, which never left her finger. At exactly noon, Rafiq walked in. He had dressed down for the occasion, wearing dark jeans and a light blue button-down shirt instead of a suit, but he still looked out of place among the cafe's regular customers. Several people turned to look as he entered, his confident stride and expensive watch marking him as someone who didn't usually eat at places like Noor's. His face brightened when he spotted Amina. "I found it without any trouble," he said as he sat down across from her. "I've driven past this place many times but never stopped in." "The food is good," Amina said, suddenly feeling self-conscious about her choice. "Simple, but good." "Those are often the best places," Rafiq replied, looking around with genuine interest. "The restaurants where my business associates insist on dining are usually all about appearance and very little about taste." A waitress came over, Fatima, who knew Amina by name. She looked curiously at Rafiq but said nothing beyond taking their orders: a chicken biryani for Amina and a mixed grill platter for Rafiq, with fresh lime sodas for both. When Fatima left, Rafiq leaned forward slightly. "So, you're a nurse?" "For 8 years now," Amina confirmed. "I work in the general ward, though I sometimes help in pediatrics when they're short-staffed." "That must be challenging work." "It is," Amina admitted. "But rewarding too. There's something special about being there for people on what might be the worst day of their lives." Rafiq nodded thoughtfully. "And before that, you mentioned your father had a repair shop?" "He did, for almost 30 years. A small place in the old part of the city. He could fix just about anything with an engine: cars, motorcycles, generators. People would bring him all sorts of things." The memory brought a smile to her face. "I used to go there after school, do my homework in the corner while he worked. Eventually I started helping him." "But you became a nurse instead of a mechanic," Rafiq observed. Amina's smile faded slightly. "The shop closed about 12 years ago. Competition from bigger places, rising rents. It became too much. My father took a job as a maintenance worker. At an apartment complex, the pay was steady at least. Their food arrived, steaming hot and fragrant." Rafiq looked impressed as he took his first bite. "This is excellent," he said, and the surprise in his voice made Amina laugh. "Did you think it wouldn't be?" she asked. "I try not to have expectations," Rafiq replied diplomatically, which made her laugh again. As they ate, Amina found herself relaxing. Rafiq asked about her work, listening with genuine interest to her stories about the hospital. He didn't check his phone or look bored when she talked about the everyday challenges of nursing. Instead, he asked thoughtful questions and seemed to value her perspective. "What about you?" Amina asked eventually, realizing she knew almost nothing about him. "What do you do that requires such expensive cars?" Rafiq smiled at her directness. "I run a company that develops commercial properties, office buildings mostly, though we've started working on some residential projects in recent years." "So, you're a businessman," Amina said. "That's what my business card says," Rafiq agreed. "Though most days I feel more like a professional meeting attender and argument solver." "Is that why you were on that road the other night, coming back from a meeting?" A shadow seemed to cross Rafiq's face. "Actually, I was coming from the cemetery. It was the anniversary of my father's death." Amina's expression softened. "I'm sorry. It's been 3 years," Rafiq said. "He was a good man, tough but fair. He built our company from nothing, worked incredibly hard to give our family a better life." He paused. "I try to visit his grave regularly, not just on anniversaries. That night, I stayed longer than usual, talking to him. That's why I was driving, back after dark." There was something in the way he spoke about his father that resonated with Amina, the same respect and affection she felt for her own parents. As they continued eating, Rafiq's eyes kept drifting to the ring on Amina's finger. Finally, he asked, "Would it be too personal if I asked about your ring? It's quite unusual." Amina looked down at the simple band with its green stone. For a moment, she considered giving him the same vague answer she'd given on the night they met. But something about his genuine interest made her reconsider. "It belonged to my grandfather," she said. "He received it as a gift many years ago from someone whose life he saved during the partition. My grandfather never talked much about what happened, but he treasured this ring above all his possessions. When he died, he left it to my father, who gave it to me on my 21st birthday." Rafiq was listening intently, his food momentarily forgotten. "May I?" he asked, gesturing toward her hand. Hesitantly, Amina extended her hand across the table. Rafiq didn't touch the ring, merely leaned closer to examine it. The green stone caught the light from the window, revealing depths that weren't immediately apparent. "It's beautiful," he said. "Not because it's valuable, though I suspect it might be, but because of the story behind it." "My father always said objects carry the weight of their histories," Amina replied, withdrawing her hand. "This ring has seen much in its time." Something flickered in Rafiq's eyes. A recognition, perhaps, or a question he wasn't ready to ask. Instead, he said, "Your father sounds like a wise man." "He was," Amina said softly, then corrected herself. "He is." Their conversation shifted to lighter topics as they finished their meal. Rafiq insisted on paying, reminding Amina that this lunch was his way of thanking her for her help. As they stepped outside the cafe, the afternoon sun warm on their faces, there was a moment of awkward silence. "Thank you for agreeing to meet me," Rafiq said finally. "I enjoyed our conversation." "So did I," Amina admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. "Perhaps we could do this again sometime." The question was casual, but Amina sensed a genuine hope behind it. She should say no, she knew. Their worlds were too different, their lives moving along paths that would never normally intersect. And yet, "I'd like that," she said, the words leaving her mouth before she could reconsider. Rafiq's smile in response was warm and real, without any of the polished charm she had first associated with him. "I'll call you? Or I realize I don't have your number." They exchanged phone numbers there on the sidewalk outside Noor's, an unexpected connection forming between two people who, just days ago, had been complete strangers. As Amina walked to the bus stop, she found herself thinking about the strange turns life could take, how a simple act of kindness on a darkening road could lead to lunch with someone from a world so different from her own, and how the ring on her finger, her grandfather's ring, seemed to weigh just a little heavier now, as if its history was somehow not yet complete. Over the next 2 weeks, Amina and Rafiq met 3 more times. Each meeting was casual: coffee at the hospital cafeteria when Amina had a break, a quick lunch near Rafiq's office downtown, and a walk in the city park on Amina's day off. Despite their different backgrounds, conversation flowed easily between them. They discovered a shared love of old Bollywood movies, a mutual dislike of pretentious people, and the same dry sense of humor that made them laugh at things others might not find funny. Today, Amina was rushing through her apartment trying to get ready. Rafiq had invited her to his company's charity fundraiser, a much more formal event than their previous meetings. She had initially declined, feeling out of place among what would surely be the city's elite. But Rafiq had insisted, saying he wanted her to see this part of his life too. "It's not a date," he'd clarified quickly. "Just 2 friends attending an event together. Friends." The word felt both right and not quite enough at the same time. Amina stared at her reflection in the mirror. She was wearing her one good outfit, a deep purple shalwar kameez with delicate embroidery that her mother had given her for her cousin's wedding last year. Her hair was pulled back in a neat bun, and she had even applied a light touch of makeup. The ring on her finger seemed to shine a bit brighter against her dressed-up appearance. Her phone buzzed with a text from Rafiq. "I'm outside." Taking a deep breath, Amina grabbed her small handbag and headed downstairs. Her apartment building was modest, clean but showing its age, with peeling paint in the stairwell and a front gate that creaked loudly. When she stepped outside, she saw Rafiq leaning against his car, wearing a perfectly tailored black suit. He straightened up when he saw her, his eyes widening slightly. "You look beautiful," he said simply. "Thank you," Amina replied, suddenly self-conscious. "Is this appropriate for your event? I don't want to embarrass you." Rafiq shook his head firmly. "You could never embarrass me. And yes, you look perfect." The drive to the hotel where the fundraiser was being held took about 20 minutes. As they got closer to the wealthier part of the city, Amina grew quieter, watching the streets change from the familiar neighborhoods she knew to areas where even the trees seemed better groomed. "Nervous?" Rafiq asked, glancing over at her. Little," Amina admitted. "I've never been to anything like this before. Just remember, most of these people are not half as interesting as they think they are," Rafiq said with a smile. "The food is good, though." That made Amina laugh, easing some of her tension. The hotel was grand, all marble floors and crystal chandeliers. Valets took cars from arriving guests and uniformed staff stood at every entrance. Inside, the ballroom was decorated with flowers and twinkling lights. Well-dressed people stood in groups, champagne glasses in hand, their jewelry catching the light as they gestured and laughed. Amina felt eyes turn toward them as Rafiq guided her through the room, his hand lightly touching the small of her back. She recognized the curiosity in those glances. Who was this unknown woman with Rafiq Hashmi, one of the city's most eligible bachelors? Rafiq, there you are. A tall woman in an elegant black dress approached them, air-kissing Rafiq on both cheeks. "We were beginning to think you weren't coming." "I wouldn't miss it, Zara," Rafiq replied. "This is my friend Amina. Amina, this is Zara Khan, our company's head of public relations and the organizer of tonight's event." "Lovely to meet you," Zara said, her eyes quickly assessing Amina with professional curiosity. "Any friend of Rafiq's is welcome here. Please enjoy yourselves. The silent auction items are displayed along that wall and dinner will be served in about an hour." As Zara moved on to greet other guests, Rafiq leaned closer to Amina. "See? Not so scary." "She seems nice," Amina said diplomatically. Rafiq laughed. "Zara is terrifying but incredibly good at her job. Come on, let me introduce you to some people who are actually nice." Over the next hour, Amina met more of Rafiq's colleagues and business associates. Some were warm and welcoming, while others barely concealed their surprise at seeing Rafiq with someone clearly not from their social circle. Amina found herself gravitating toward an older gentleman named Ismail, a retired doctor who now sat on the board of Rafiq's company. "So how did you and Rafiq meet?" Ismail asked as they stood near the silent auction tables. "I helped him when his car broke down," Amina replied honestly. Ismail's eyebrows rose in surprise. "You're a mechanic?" "A nurse," Amina clarified. "But I know a bit about cars. My father owned a repair shop when I was growing up." "Ah, a woman of many talents," Ismail said with genuine warmth. "Rafiq could use someone like you in his life. Too many people around him just tell him what he wants to hear." Before Amina could respond, Rafiq rejoined them, having been pulled away briefly by a business associate. "I see you've met Ismail," he said. "He was my father's closest friend and has been like an uncle to me. We were just getting acquainted," Ismail said with a smile. "You've found yourself an interesting friend, Rafiq." Dinner was announced, and Rafiq led Amina to their assigned table near the front of the room. The meal was served on fine china, with more silverware than Amina was used to, but she watched others and followed their lead. Throughout dinner, Rafiq made sure she was included in conversations, explaining industry terms when they came up and introducing topics she could comfortably join. After dessert was served, the formal part of the evening began. The charity being supported was a foundation providing medical care to underserved communities, building clinics in areas where healthcare was scarce. As Amina listened to the presentation, she found herself genuinely moved by the work being done. "This is wonderful," she said quietly to Rafiq. "These clinics will make such a difference." "I'm glad you approve," Rafiq replied. "Our company has been supporting this foundation for years. My father started the partnership." When the presentation ended, music began playing, and couples moved to the dance floor. Rafiq turned to Amina with a questioning look. "Would you like to dance? Or we can leave if you're tired." "I'm not much of a dancer," Amina confessed. "Neither am I," Rafiq said with a grin. "We can be bad at it together." The simple honesty of that statement made Amina laugh, and she allowed him to lead her to the dance floor. The music was slow, making it easier to follow along. Rafiq's hand was warm on her back as they moved in small circles among the other couples. "Thank you for coming tonight," Rafiq said softly. "I know this isn't your usual scene." "It's not," Amina agreed. "But I'm glad I came. The work your foundation is doing is important." "It was my father's passion project," Rafiq explained. He grew up very poor, in a village with no proper health care. When his younger sister got sick, they couldn't get her to a doctor in time. He paused, his eyes distant with old family pain. That's why when he became successful, the first thing he did was start funding rural healthcare initiatives. Amina felt a new respect for Rafiq's family. That's a beautiful way to honor her memory. As they continued dancing, Amina's ring caught the light, drawing Rafiq's attention once again. "I've been meaning to ask you more about your grandfather," he said. "You mentioned he saved someone's life during partition?" Amina nodded. "From what my father told me, my grandfather was working at the train station when the riots broke out. A wealthy man and his son were cornered by a mob. My grandfather helped them escape and hide until it was safe. The man offered him money as thanks, but my grandfather refused. Instead, the man gave him this ring, saying it had been in his family for generations and was a symbol of honor." Rafiq's steps faltered slightly. "Did your father ever mention the man's name?" "I think so, but I don't remember it," Amina said. "Why do you ask?" Rafiq seemed about to say something important when they were interrupted by Ismail. "Sorry to disturb your dance," the older man said, "but there's someone who insists on speaking with you, Rafiq. A potential investor who's leaving soon." Rafiq looked torn, but Amina squeezed his hand. "Go ahead. Business is important." "I'll be right back," he promised, following Ismail off the dance floor. Left alone, Amina made her way to the edge of the room, feeling somewhat out of place without Rafiq beside her. She found a quiet corner near an elaborate flower arrangement and took a moment to observe the crowd. The wealth in the room was staggering, from the designer clothes to the jewelry that probably cost more than she earned in a year. "It's a bit much, isn't it?" a voice said beside her. Amina turned to find Zara, Rafiq's colleague, standing nearby with a glass of water. "The party is lovely," Amina said politely. "But not what you're used to," Zara replied with a knowing smile. "I grew up in a middle-class family myself. The first time I attended one of these events, I felt like an imposter." She studied Amina with interest. "You're different from Rafiq's usual friends." The pause before friends was subtle but clear. "We are just friends," Amina clarified. "Of course," Zara said smoothly. "Still, it's refreshing to see him with someone real. Most of the women in his social circle are more interested in his bank account than him." She took a sip of her water. "He seems happier these past few weeks, more like the Rafiq I knew before his father died." Amina wasn't sure how to respond to that, but she was saved by Rafiq's return. "Sorry about that," he said, rejoining them. "Business never really stops, even at charity events." "No problem," Zara said. "I was just getting to know Amina better. I'll leave you two alone now." As Zara walked away, Rafiq turned to Amina with a concerned look. "Everything okay?" "Yes," Amina assured him. Zara was very nice. Rafiq looked skeptical. "Zara is many things, but nice isn't usually one of them." "She said I was good for you," Amina admitted with a small smile. "That you seem happier lately." "She's right," Rafiq said, his voice suddenly serious. "I am happier, because of you." The intensity in his eyes made Amina's heart beat faster. This was dangerous territory, feelings developing between two people from worlds that rarely intersected. "Rafiq, we come from such different places," she began. "Does that matter?" he asked. "In real life?" "Yes, it often does." Amina touched her ring absently, a habit when she was thinking deeply. Rafiq's eyes followed the movement. "About your grandfather's ring," he said, changing the subject. "There's something I need to—" He was interrupted again, this time by the announcement that the silent auction was closing in 5 minutes. The moment passed, and Amina couldn't help feeling that something important had been left unsaid. As the evening wound down, Rafiq drove Amina home in comfortable silence. When they reached her apartment building, he walked her to the entrance. "Thank you for tonight," Amina said. "It was educational." Rafiq laughed. "That's one way to put it." He hesitated, then added, "I'd like to show you something tomorrow if you're free. Something important." "What is it?" Amina asked, curious. "It's about your ring," Rafiq said. "And my family, I think. I think our histories might be connected in a way neither of us expected." The seriousness in his voice sent a strange shiver down Amina's spine. "What time?" "I can pick you up at noon," Rafiq suggested. "It won't take long." "Okay," Amina agreed, her curiosity piqued. As she watched Rafiq drive away, Amina looked down at the ring on her finger, the simple band with its unusual green stone that had been in her family for generations. Somehow she felt that tomorrow would change everything she thought she knew about its history, and perhaps her future as well. Amina barely slept that night, her mind racing with questions about what Rafiq had meant. How could their families be connected? The ring had been in her family for decades, passed down from her grandfather to her father and then to her. It was their most treasured possession, even during the hardest times when selling it might have eased their financial struggles. She woke early the next morning and called her father, something she did every few days anyway. "Baba, I wanted to ask you about grandfather's ring," she said after they had exchanged greetings and he had updated her on the neighborhood gossip. "Your ring?" her father asked, sounding surprised. "What about it?" "Do you remember the name of the man who gave it to grandfather, the one whose life he saved?" There was a pause on the other end of the line. "Why do you ask, Amina?" "I met someone who I think might know something about it." Her father was quiet for a moment. "The man's name was Hashmi, Hassan Hashmi. He was a businessman from the city." "Why? Who did you meet?" Amina's heart skipped a beat. Hashmi, the same as Rafiq's last name. Just someone who was curious about the ring, she said, not wanting to say too much until she knew more. "Thanks, Baba. I'll call you tomorrow." After hanging up, Amina sat on the edge of her bed, staring at the ring. Hassan Hashmi. Could he be related to Rafiq? It seemed too coincidental, and yet she spent the morning cleaning her small apartment more to keep busy than because it needed it. At exactly noon, her phone buzzed with a text from Rafiq. "I'm outside." Taking a deep breath, Amina grabbed her bag and headed downstairs. Rafiq was waiting by his car, dressed more casually than she had ever seen him. Jeans and a simple button-down shirt, sleeves rolled up to his elbows. He looked almost normal, like someone who might live in her neighborhood rather than in the wealthy part of the city. "Hi," she said as she approached. "Hi," Rafiq replied, opening the passenger door for her. "Did you sleep well?" "Not really," Amina admitted. "I kept thinking about what you said about our families being connected." Rafiq nodded as he got into the driver's seat. "I didn't sleep much either. There's somewhere I want to take you. It's about an hour's drive." "Where are we going?" "To my family's home," Rafiq said. "Not where I live now, but the house where I grew up. My father's house." As they drove out of the city, Amina watched the landscape change from crowded streets to open countryside. They talked easily during the journey, but avoided the subject of the ring and their families, as if by unspoken agreement saving that conversation for when they reached their destination. Eventually, Rafiq turned onto a private road lined with old trees. At the end stood a large house, not a modern mansion like Amina had expected, but an older home with character, built in a colonial style with wide verandas and tall windows. "This is where you grew up?" Amina asked as they parked. "Yes," Rafiq said. "My grandfather bought it when he first became successful, and it's been in our family ever since." An elderly man in a simple uniform came out to greet them. "Good afternoon, sir. It's good to see you again so soon." "Thank you, Abdul. This is my friend Amina. We'll be in my father's study." Abdul nodded respectfully to Amina before returning to the house. "Abdul has been with our family for over 40 years, Rafiq explained as he led Amina inside. He knew my father better than anyone. The interior of the house was elegant but not ostentatious, with polished wooden floors, traditional furniture, and family photographs on the walls. Amina noticed that despite its size, it felt like a home, not a showpiece. Rafiq led her to a room at the back of the house, a study with bookshelves covering one wall and large windows overlooking a garden. A heavy wooden desk dominated the space, and above it hung a portrait of an older man with Rafiq's eyes and a serious expression. "My father," Rafiq said, following her gaze to the portrait. "Tariq Hashmi." "You look like him," Amina observed. "So I'm told," Rafiq replied with a small smile. He gestured for her to sit in one of the leather armchairs while he went to a cabinet in the corner. After unlocking it with a small key, he removed a wooden box and brought it to the desk. "Yesterday, when you told me about your grandfather helping a man and his son during partition, something clicked," Rafiq said, his voice quiet but intense. "I'd heard a similar story all my life about how my grandfather and my father were saved by a stranger at the train station during the riots." Amina's breath caught. "Your grandfather was Hassan Hashmi?" Rafiq looked up in surprise. "You know his name?" "I called my father this morning," Amina explained. "He told me the name of the man who gave my grandfather the ring. Hassan Hashmi." Rafiq nodded slowly. "My grandfather, and the son with him that day was my father, who was just 7 years old at the time." He opened the box carefully. "My grandfather was a successful textile merchant. When the violence broke out, he and my father were trying to catch a train out of the city. They were cornered by a mob. According to family history, a young station worker helped them hide in a storage room and then guided them to safety through back alleys when things calmed down." "That sounds like what my father told me about my grandfather," Amina said softly. "My grandfather offered the man money as a reward," Rafiq continued, "but he refused to take it. He said he hadn't helped them for a reward, but because it was the right thing to do." He looked up at Amina. "That sounds a lot like someone else I know who stopped to help a stranger with a broken car." Amina felt a warmth spread through her chest at the comparison to her grandfather. "My grandfather was deeply moved by this man's kindness," Rafiq said. "He insisted on giving him something to show his gratitude. Not payment, but a token of respect. So he gave him this." From the box, Rafiq removed a small velvet pouch. He opened it and tipped the contents into his palm. A ring almost identical to the one Amina wore, with the same unusual green stone. Amina gasped, instinctively touching her own ring. "They're the same." "Almost," Rafiq said. "They were a pair, family heirlooms that had been passed down through generations. My grandfather kept one and gave one to your grandfather. He told my father that he had never encountered such selfless courage, and that the ring would remind your grandfather that good deeds create bonds that last beyond a single moment." Amina's eyes filled with tears as she looked at the two rings, one on her finger, one in Rafiq's palm. "My grandfather treasured this ring all his life. He never spoke much about what happened, but he always said the ring reminded him that doing the right thing even when it's dangerous matters." "My grandfather felt the same way about your grandfather's actions," Rafiq said, his voice thick with emotion. "He made sure my father knew the story, and my father told it to me many times. It shaped our family's values. It's why my father started the foundation to help others and why I continue that work." He looked at Amina with new eyes, as if seeing her more clearly than before. "When I saw your ring that night by the side of the road, something about it seemed familiar, but I couldn't place it. It wasn't until you mentioned your grandfather and partition that I started to wonder. I asked my father's old friend Ismail about it last night and he confirmed the story. So our grandfathers knew each other, Amina said, trying to process this revelation. All those years ago. More than knew each other. Your grandfather saved my family's lives, Rafiq corrected gently. Without him, neither my father nor I would be here. They sat in silence for a moment, both looking at the rings, physical reminders of a connection formed decades before either of them was born. It feels like, Rafiq began, then paused, searching for the right words. Like fate? Amina suggested with a small smile. That I would be the one to stop and help you that night. I was going to say an incredible coincidence, but fate sounds better, Rafiq admitted, returning her smile. Either way, I'm grateful. He carefully returned his ring to its pouch and placed it back in the box. My father always hoped to find the family of the man who saved them, to thank them properly. He tried a few times over the years, but without success. He would have been amazed to know that decades later the man's granddaughter would stop to help his son on a dark road. My grandfather would say it was simply the right thing to do, Amina said, and he would be right. Rafiq closed the box gently. Would you like to see the rest of the house? And then perhaps have lunch in the garden? Abdul makes the best biryani you've ever tasted. I'd like that, Amina said. As Rafiq showed her through the house, he shared stories of growing up there, climbing the old mango tree in the garden, sliding down the banister when his parents weren't looking, falling asleep in the library while pretending to study. Amina found herself relaxing, seeing a side of Rafiq she hadn't glimpsed before, the boy who had lived inside this house, not just the successful businessman he had become. They ate lunch on the veranda, a delicious biryani prepared by Abdul, who seemed pleased by Amina's genuine appreciation of his cooking. The gardens around the house were beautiful, with flowering plants and mature trees providing shade from the afternoon sun. My mother loved gardening, Rafiq explained, as they walked along a stone path after lunch. She passed away when I was 15, but the garden still feels like her space. It's beautiful, Amina said sincerely. You must miss her. Every day, Rafiq admitted. She would have liked you, I think. Before Amina could respond, Rafiq's phone rang. He checked the screen and frowned. I'm sorry, I need to take this. It's work. As he stepped away to take the call, Amina continued walking through the garden, thinking about everything she had learned. The connection between their families felt significant, like something out of a story rather than real life. And yet here they were, two people from different worlds, brought together first by a broken-down car, and now by a shared history they hadn't known existed. Rafiq rejoined her a few minutes later, looking apologetic. I'm really sorry, but there's an issue at one of our construction sites. I need to go back to the city and deal with it. Of course, Amina said, understanding. Work is important. They drove back mostly in silence, both lost in their own thoughts. When they reached Amina's apartment building, Rafiq parked and turned to her. Thank you for coming with me today, he said, for learning about our family's connection. Thank you for showing me, Amina replied. It means a lot to know more about my grandfather's story. Rafiq hesitated, then said, I'd like to meet your father sometime, if that would be okay. To thank him, and through him, your grandfather. The request surprised Amina, but she found herself nodding. I think he would like that. As she got out of the car, Rafiq called after her. Amina, there's a benefit dinner for the hospital next weekend. Would you like to come with me? Amina smiled. As friends? As whatever we are, Rafiq replied honestly. Two people connected by history and maybe something more. I'd like that, Amina said, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with the afternoon sun. As she walked up to her apartment, Amina touched the ring on her finger, seeing it with new eyes. No longer just a family heirloom, but a symbol of connection, of lives intertwined across generations. Her simple act of kindness on a dark road had been an echo of her grandfather's courage decades earlier, bringing the story full circle in a way neither of them could have imagined. And perhaps, she thought as she looked back to see Rafiq still watching from his car, beginning a new chapter altogether. 3 months had passed since Amina and Rafiq discovered the connection between their families. Summer had faded into autumn, bringing cooler air and golden light to the city. Their relationship had deepened during this time, moving beyond friendship into something more meaningful, though neither had rushed to define it. Today was special. Amina had invited Rafiq to her family home for lunch, a small, modest house in an old neighborhood where her father still lived. It would be the first time Rafiq would meet her father, and Amina felt both nervous and excited as she helped prepare the meal. "Baba, remember that Rafiq is used to fancy food," Amina teased as her father carefully added spices to his famous lamb curry. At 65, Nasir Ahmad was still strong and vital, with kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled and hands that showed years of hard work. "Good food is good food," her father replied confidently. "It doesn't need to be fancy." He tasted the curry, nodding in satisfaction. "Besides, this recipe has been winning hearts for 3 generations. Your grandfather taught it to me and his father to him." Amina smiled, setting the table with their best dishes. Nothing expensive, but clean and well kept, like everything in their home. She had worried at first about bringing Rafiq here, about the stark contrast between his family's grand house and their small home, but she had come to know him well enough to trust that such things didn't matter to him the way they might to others. At exactly noon, there was a knock at the door. Amina opened it to find Rafiq standing there, looking slightly nervous himself. He wore simple clothes, dark jeans and a light blue shirt, and carried a bouquet of flowers and a small package, wrapped in elegant paper. "You found it okay?" Amina asked, welcoming him in. "Your directions were perfect," Rafiq assured her, handing her the flowers. "These are for you." "They're beautiful," Amina said, genuinely touched. "Come in. My father is excited to meet you." Nasir. Ahmad came out from the kitchen, wiping his hands on a small towel. There was a moment of silence as the 2 men looked at each other, one who had grown up with wealth and opportunity, the other who had worked hard all his life to provide for his family. Then Nasir smiled warmly and extended his hand. "Welcome to our home, Rafiq. I've heard much about you." "All good things, I hope," Rafiq replied, shaking his hand firmly. "It's an honor to meet you, sir. These are for you." He handed the wrapped package to Nasir. "You didn't need to bring anything," Nasir said, but his eyes showed pleasure at the gesture. "It's just something small," Rafiq explained. Nasir carefully unwrapped the package to reveal a beautiful wooden box, hand-carved with intricate patterns. Inside, nestled on velvet, was a framed black and white photograph of 2 young men standing side by side outside a train station. "This was found among my grandfather's belongings after he passed," Rafiq explained quietly. On the back he had written, "Me and the brave young man who saved our lives 1947. I believe the young man is your father, Amina's grandfather." Nasir stared at the photograph, his hands trembling slightly. "Yes," he whispered, "that's my father." He looked up at Rafiq with moist eyes. "I never saw a picture of him this young. He would have been only 20 at the time." "My grandfather kept it all these years," Rafiq said. "He never forgot what your father did." Amina felt tears welling in her own eyes as she looked at the photo, her grandfather young and serious standing beside Rafiq's grandfather. 2 men from different worlds, connected by a moment of courage and kindness. "This is a precious gift," Nasir said, carefully placing the frame back in its box. "Thank you." The emotional moment gave way to a more relaxed atmosphere as Nasir invited them to sit for lunch. The small dining table was set simply but with care, the food served in Amina's mother's old dishes that were kept for special occasions. "This smells amazing," Rafiq said as Nasir served the curry. "My special recipe," Nasir replied with pride. "Amina can make it too, though she claims mine is better." "Because it is, Baba," Amina laughed. "Some magic only comes with experience." As they ate, the conversation flowed easily. Nasir told stories about his father, Amina's grandfather, and the repair shop he had run for many years. Rafiq shared memories of his own father and grandfather, and how their experiences had shaped the family business's commitment to giving back to the community. "Your foundation's work with rural health care is remarkable," Nasir said. "Building clinics in areas that need them most. It's making a real difference." "That was my father's vision," Rafiq explained. "He never forgot what it was like to grow up without access to proper medical care." "Amina tells me you're expanding the program to include more preventative care," Nasir added, clearly having paid attention to what his daughter had shared about Rafiq's work. "Yes, we're finding that early intervention saves more lives in the long run," Rafiq confirmed. "Actually, we're hoping to partner with City General Hospital on some initiatives. Amina's insights have been invaluable in shaping the program." Amina looked up in surprise. "You didn't tell me that part was moving forward." "I just got the approval yesterday," Rafiq said with a smile. "I was going to surprise you." "That's wonderful news," Nasir said, beaming at his daughter. "Amina has always had good ideas about improving healthcare access. Even as a child, she would ask why everyone couldn't see a doctor when they needed one." After lunch, Nasir insisted on showing Rafiq the small garden behind the house. It wasn't grand like the gardens at Rafiq's family home, but it was lovingly tended, with vegetables growing alongside flowers in neat rows. "I grow most of our vegetables here," Nasir explained proudly. "Nothing tastes better than food you've grown yourself." "My mother would have agreed completely," Rafiq said, admiring a flourishing tomato plant. "She always said store-bought vegetables had no soul." Nasir laughed appreciatively. "A wise woman, your mother." While the men talked in the garden, Amina cleared the table, listening to their conversation through the open window. She had worried that they might struggle to find common ground, coming from such different backgrounds. Instead, they seemed to be discovering all the ways in which their values aligned, despite the external differences in their lives. When Rafiq finally had to leave, Nasir walked him to the door with genuine warmth, inviting him to return soon. Amina stepped outside with Rafiq, walking him to his car. "Your father is an incredible man," Rafiq said sincerely. "I can see where you get your strength and kindness." "He liked you too," Amina replied. "I could tell." Rafiq took her hand, his thumb gently brushing over the ring she wore. The ring that had unknowingly connected their families for decades. "There's something I've been wanting to talk to you about," he said, his voice taking on a more serious tone. "The hospital partnership I mentioned. It's more than just a typical foundation project." "What do you mean?" Amina asked. "We're establishing a new clinic in the eastern part of the city, where medical services are limited. It will focus on providing care to those who can't afford it." Rafiq's eyes held hers. "I'd like you to consider running it." Amina stared at him in shock. "Me? But I'm just a nurse, not an administrator." "You're much more than just anything, Amina," Rafiq said firmly. "You understand both the medical needs and the community needs. You have ideas about healthcare that align perfectly with what we're trying to achieve. This isn't charity or favoritism. It's recognition of your skills and perspective." Amina felt overwhelmed. "I don't know what to say." "You don't have to decide now," Rafiq assured her. "Think about it. Talk to your father. The position would be there whenever you're ready." "Thank you for believing in me," Amina said softly. "How could I not?" Rafiq smiled. "You fixed my car when no one else stopped to help." The simple reference to their first meeting made them both laugh, easing the emotion of the moment. "I should go," Rafiq said reluctantly. "I have a meeting at 4. "Always busy," Amina teased gently. "Not too busy for what matters," Rafiq replied, his eyes serious again. He hesitated, then added, "I've been thinking about something else too. About us." Amina's heart quickened. "What about us?" "These past months have been the happiest I can remember," Rafiq said. "Finding you, discovering our connection, it feels like more than coincidence." "Like fate?" Amina suggested, echoing their conversation from months ago. "Exactly like fate," Rafiq agreed. I don't want to rush you, but I want you to know that I'm serious about this, about us. Whatever pace works for you, whatever you're comfortable with, I'm here." Instead of answering with words, Amina stood on tiptoe and kissed him gently. It was their first kiss, simple and sweet, but carrying the weight of everything they had discovered together. "I'm serious about us too," she said when they parted. From the doorway, Nasir watched them with a small smile before quietly stepping back inside to give them privacy. He went to the mantelpiece where he had already placed the photograph Rafiq had brought. His father and Rafiq's grandfather, standing together at the beginning of a connection that had spanned generations. 6. Months later, on a cool spring evening, Amina stood in the newly completed clinic in the Eastern District. Large windows let in the last golden light of day, illuminating modern medical equipment and comfortable waiting areas. Tomorrow would be the grand opening, with city officials and community leaders in attendance. But tonight, the space was quiet, allowing Amina to take it all in. As the director of the new facility, she had overseen every aspect of its development, from the layout to the services offered. Her years of nursing experience had informed every decision, creating a place where people would receive not just medical care but dignity and respect. "What do you think?" Rafiq asked, coming to stand beside her. "Is it everything you hoped?" "It's more," Amina said, her voice full of emotion. "I never imagined being part of something like this." Rafiq took her hand, his fingers brushing over the ring she still wore every day. His own matching ring now resided on his right hand, taken from its box after all these years to honor the connection between their families. "Our grandfathers would be proud," he said softly. "Yes," Amina agreed, "though my grandfather would say it's just what people should do for each other." "And he'd be right," Rafiq smiled. "Simple acts of kindness can change everything." They stood, together in the quiet clinic, two people from different worlds brought together by a broken-down car and a family legacy of courage and compassion. The rings on their fingers caught the fading light, twin symbols of a story that had begun decades ago and was still unfolding. Outside, the city continued its evening rhythm. People heading home from work, children playing in parks, lives intersecting in countless ways. Among them, countless small acts of kindness were taking place, most going unnoticed and unrewarded. But some, like a young station worker helping a father and son escape danger, or a tired nurse stopping to help a stranded driver, would ripple through time in ways no one could predict. And sometimes, those ripples would bring together hearts that were always meant to find each other.